VIBErations podcast, episode 54, Bob Bunker. Recorded on Wednesday the 30th of April 2025. Hi, I'm Gary Brightman, and this is my periodic podcast called VIBErations. Established in 2018, Vibe is a book and music shop situated in Mui Wo on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. In a few weeks' time, Vibe Book and Music Shop will celebrate its 7th birthday. In these 7 years, we've come a long way, and Vibe is now a business selling from a stock of around 16,000 books in English, Chinese and French, 2,000 vinyl records of all genres, 1,500 CDs, new and used vinyl record players, T-shirts, hats, merchandise, cards and postcards, and a whole lot more. We also like to think that we support the community well, offering printing, scanning, photocopying and laminating. Every other Saturday we showcase on Facebook Live, authors' book talks and various musical artists. We provide DJing for the annual Lantau Live Festival and other events in Vibe. We produce media with Studio 114. I'm a sound and video editor. I produce audiobooks for Amazon. We have a children's mini-series on our YouTube channel called Tales of Jack and Millie. And over our 7 years we've produced 155 videos, including interviewing 55 local businesses, musicians, producers, creatives and film directors. All of the above is produced on a voluntary non-profit making basis. The non-profit making part is not a business decision, but more a sign of the times, sadly. I'd like to thank our 5 volunteers who kindly give up their precious time to keep Vibe running for 6 days a week without reward. So, a big thanks to Elaine, Susan, Charlie, Sam and Carrie. And also to Stephen Walsh, who keeps pushing the shop forward with innovation. If you're interested to see more of our media, it's published on YouTube at Live at VIBEHK, on Instagram at VIBEHK, on Facebook at Vibe Silvermine Bay, on LinkedIn at Vibe Book and Music Shop, on our website at vibehk.com, or you can join our mailing list by emailing me at vibehk@icloud.com. A couple of weeks ago, we showcased a talk from local retired businessman Bob Bunker on the recent history of Lantau Island. The event was very well supported and can be seen on our YouTube channel. So, for this week's podcast, I interviewed Bob. Born in the UK, on graduating in 1968 from Cambridge with a degree in French and German, Bob went to work for a stockbroking firm in the City of London to look after their European business. He came to Hong Kong in 1979, where he worked for Chase Manhattan Bank. Then spent many years as Director of HSBC's investment operation and latterly worked for a private investment operation along with several ex-HSBC colleagues before retiring in 2010. He sat for many years on the listing committee for the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, vetting mainland companies for listing. Bob was one of the founding fathers who set up the Hong Kong Securities Institute to improve standards of professionalism in the finance industry and set entry exams and licensing. In 1985, Bob and his wife Sally and 2 sons took a weekend cottage in Shui Hao on Lantau Island, and then moved to Mui Wo full-time in 1997. He's retired now on Lantau with his well-known artist wife Sally. They have 2 sons, 2 grandchildren and a dog. So, welcome to Vibe, Bob.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honour to be here. Thank you.
Where are you originally from in the UK?
I'm from the UK. I grew up round about London.
Okay.
I went to school in Ealing.
Okay.
And then I went to university in Cambridge and worked in the City of London for a little while and then came out here.
So when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I think like most little boys, I actually wanted to be an engine driver.
Right.
I'd always been fascinated by trains and I liked trains. And I always thought I'd like to be an engine driver, but somehow it didn't work out. And I remember when I was working in finance and sort of shouting multi-mega deals down the telephone, I remember thinking, how did it all go so wrong? How come I never ended up following my dream? So in some ways I made up for this a little bit, because some years ago I got myself on a steam train engine driver's course on the Bluebell Railway in UK, which is a heritage railway where they've got all these old engines. And I spent 10 days learning to drive an 1898 tank engine. And I tell you, it's not easy. Those old drivers and firemen, they were tough, they were skilled, they were experienced. Getting 60 tons of antique ironmongery moving at the right speed and stopping it is not easy. And also you realise why we had to get rid of the steam engine, because they were so labour intensive. I mean, it took us, there were a gang of about 4 or 5 of us on this course, and it took us about an hour or so to start it up in the morning and 2 hours to clean it and put it to bed every night, rake all the ash out.
Wow.
With this grumpy old retired engine driver who was our tutor, going around and saying that old engineer's motto, if it moves, oil it, if it doesn't move, polish it.
Yeah, and of course those engines, they would have a big a big container behind them full of the coal, and you'd be constantly shoveling coal in a fire, so you'd have the heat as well. And
you can't just throw the coal in and hope for the best. Each shovelful has to land in exactly the right place.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you leave a hole in it, the fire bars burn through and everything, and then you're in big trouble. Yeah. So it's not easy.
Loss of power and
that's right.
And game.
Anyway, unfortunately, that didn't work out. So here I am in Hong Kong.
Was it found in London and try Hong Kong?
Something like that, yes.
Okay. All right. And what was the funniest memory you have from your school days?
Oh, gosh. That's a bit of a tough one, because I was afraid I was a bit of a riotous character at school. We did all kinds of stupid, hilarious things. I do remember on one school report, I wish I'd kept this school report and framed it actually, it said, suffers from an overdeveloped sense of humour, and if only he could devote as much time to his work as he does to messing around in class, he might get somewhere. So it's a shame I never kept that. That would be quite a souvenir to have. But
and that would have been a sort of under 10 years old, over 10 years old?
Oh, I was about 13, 14 then.
Yeah.
Did all kinds of crazy things. I remember we produced a satirical version of the school magazine lampooning all the teachers, and we got into quite a lot of trouble about that, I remember. And those were the days. Yes.
And you were such a failure then that you went to Cambridge.
Well, I ended up there, yes, that's right. I actually did French and German at university, and you may well say, how come I ended up spending most of my career in finance in Hong Kong? Well, it's all linked up really, in that I basically got a job in the City of London with a firm of stockbrokers who wanted someone who spoke French and German to look after their European business.
Okay.
And it sort of grew from there, and then I moved into trading Eurobonds.
Right. And
fixed income things. And then I got offered a job with an American bank out here, and that was in 1979, 2-year contract. And like so many expats, a 2-year contract in 1979, and I'm still here.
79.
Yeah.
Wow. And who was the finance house? Are you allowed to tell us?
Well, I was with Chase Manhattan Bank.
Okay.
And while I was there, one of my biggest clients was actually HSBC's investment bank.
Okay.
And interestingly, Chase were making noises about wanting to send me to Tokyo.
Right.
I didn't really fancy going to Tokyo.
No.
I thought, I like Hong Kong. And so when I got offered a directorship of HSBC's investment bank, I thought, wow, that's a good way to stay in Hong Kong.
Yes.
So I did.
Perfect.
And then latterly, I was working for a private investment management group, which was actually all full of ex-HSBC group colleagues, people from the trustee company, people from the brokerage house, etc. And in fact, somebody very unkindly described our company as an HSBC old folks home, which I thought was most unkind. Anyway, I retired from that some years ago.
Yes.
I stayed on doing a few other things. I was on the Stock Exchange Listing Committee, which vets all the new companies coming to the Stock Exchange. That was a fascinating thing. I was on there for quite a few years. But I've eased off that one now, and I was on a couple of disciplinary boards as well that used to basically deal with people being naughty in financial circles. But I'm gradually easing my way out of all these things.
Right. Was that the London Stock Exchange or the Hong Kong
Stock Exchange? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Coming back to school days, I remember one bit of advice given to me. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time. When we all graduated from school and moved on, I remember the headmaster giving us all a pep talk. And one of the things he said was, if you go through your life looking for doors to open, you'll probably find they don't.
Yeah.
The secret is to make sure you're standing in the right place at the right time, being able to spot the doors when they're opening and then go for it.
Yeah.
And that's actually happened quite well, because the interesting thing is that, as I said, I was working in the City of London, and I'd reached, I think I must have been about 32, and I remember thinking, gosh, I'm halfway to retirement. And I suddenly had a horrible sort of, I suppose, early midlife crisis, I suppose. I suddenly thought, am I going to be sitting here shouting the same numbers down the same telephone for the next 32 years?
Yeah.
And talk about things coming together at the same time. Sally, my wife, as you know, she's a very lively, very fit person.
Yeah.
But she actually suffers from a rather rare blood circulation ailment, which doesn't debilitate her at all, but means she can't take cold weather.
Yes.
And she was getting quite poorly in winter time in UK.
Yeah.
And we've been up and down Harley Street seeing all kinds of specialists, and eventually one of them said to me, well, look, we think we'll have a cure for your condition in about 2 years' time, Mrs. Bunker. Why don't you see if you can go and live in a nice hot country for a couple of years and come back, and then I'm sure we'll be able to fix your condition. Just at that same time, I was approached by this American bank to work in Hong Kong. I mean, I didn't even know where Hong Kong was at the time, but I looked it up on the map, and I spoke to some people who'd been to Hong Kong. They said, yes, it's hot in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So we jumped on a plane with, talk about spotting the doors opening and just going for it, with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old under each arm, and 6 suitcases. We jumped on a plane, and the rest is history.
Wow.
And, as an aside, they haven't in fact found a cure after 2 years, but Sally keeps very well here. She keeps herself nice and warm and loves the climate.
Yeah, perfect. So that would have been 1979?
That was 1979, that's right.
Okay, so you kind of didn't need to engineer all the stars were lined up, weren't they?
Well,
really,
that's
I
right.
suppose,
yes, exactly. And again, as I said,
perfect.
when the bank was sort of mumbling about sending me to Tokyo, then suddenly, whoosh bang, a door opened with an opportunity here to stay in Hong Kong, and that's why I'm here.
Good.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you would have moved here with some sort of expat agreement, I guess.
That's right. Yes.
Did that include the sort of housing and schooling?
Actually, it was absurd the way we lived. Frankly, I mean, I must admit, I was a big campaigner against it. Actually, I was not very popular with my colleagues because they love living the high life, and I said, look, this is absolutely absurd. It is not sustainable. Give me the money, and I will live in a sampan.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the problems actually with expat packages, and I see this more and more as so many of my friends have hit retirement age, people live life high on the hog here. Wonderful expat package, everything provided, etc. And when they retire, suddenly it stops.
Yeah, it crashes down.
And they've got no housing, and the trouble is, if you don't own property in Hong Kong, you can't afford to retire here because the rentals will kill you.
Yes.
So it's interesting actually, of my contemporaries, the only guys who are staying on here, quite a few are actually, but they're people who had the foresight to buy property. Yeah. That's the thing, the important thing, get property.
Yeah, totally agree, as indeed we have also. I mean, I think it's amongst the most expensive real estate in the world, isn't it? For rental and for purchase as well.
That's right, yes.
So better get on that ladder early while you've got good income,
that was what
really.
we thought. And I mean, we thought, this is just not going to last, and we'd like to stay in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And that's why we started buying property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So early doors, 1979, you move over. Where do you live? Where do you move to?
Well, we initially lived in Port Fulam, then we lived at the Peak then.
Okay.
Which is very nice. But again, as I said, I kept thinking, this is not going to last, guys.
Yeah. You're realist, aren't you?
And also, Sally was saying, that it's all very well lovely house, lovely big house, everything provided, blah blah, but it's not my house.
Yeah.
I want to have
Yeah.
somewhere that's mine and feel that it's mine. And so what we did was we actually bought a little weekend place here on Lantau just to have
Okay.
a weekend down in Shui Hao,
Yeah.
and we just loved it here every weekend.
Yeah.
It was absolutely great, particularly when the kids were growing up. Their
Yeah.
friends used to come over, all the scouts used to come and camp in the garden and everything. It was absolutely super fun. But again, you see, people in those days didn't buy property in Hong Kong. I was ridiculed
Yeah.
by my fellow directors.
Really. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny actually. I remember we took a decision we wanted to stay in Hong Kong in about 1981, 82, because I remember coming home one night and recounting one of the conversations I'd been having with some mates about where are you going to go to when you retire? And everyone was talking about, going to France and Italy and Scotland and tax havens like Guernsey. Or people were talking about Andorra for some reason or other, which is apparently is a tax haven.
Yeah.
And Sally, who is the world's greatest out-of-the-box thinker,
Yeah.
said, who says we have to go somewhere? Which was absolutely radical, because, I mean, in those
Yeah.
days, you didn't.
Yeah.
You worked out here for 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
saved enough money to retire to your cottage in Devon with the roses round the door.
Yes.
So, anyway, we sat down and wrote out a spreadsheet. It shows you how long ago it was. It was
Yeah.
before Excel, when you wrote out spreadsheets by hand.
Yes.
And we listed all these places people were talking about going to along the top.
Yeah.
And down the side we put all the qualities you wanted in a place to live, place to work, place to retire.
Yep.
Do you know what got more ticks anywhere else?
Well, I can kind of guess.
Hong Kong. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, you think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's safe.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Very safe.
It's a climate that we like.
Yeah.
The people here are lovely. I mean, the
Yeah.
Chinese are lovely, and all the
Yeah.
expats here are lovely.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful community, and also once you retire, you pay no tax at all in Hong Kong. Once
Yes.
you stop earning a salary,
Yes.
there's only salaries tax here. There's no interest tax, no capital gains tax.
No.
So once you stop earning and you live off your savings, you
Yeah.
live tax free. And also, we've abolished inheritance tax, so we can even
Yeah.
die free of charge. Isn't this exciting? Yes.
It is.
So yes,
Yeah.
by and large, Hong Kong takes a lot of beating, and that's
Yeah.
another reason why we decided that we wanted to buy property. We started off we bought this little place in Shui Hao and loved it, and then what we did, that was in about 85, and then 1996, we'd actually bought where we are now at the top of the hill in Mui Wo. We'd actually bought it was actually 3 holiday flats. That was a big deal in those days. You could
Yeah.
you could actually buy holiday flats quite cheaply and let them out and make quite a good return on your money. So we bought them as an investment.
Yeah.
And Sally was checking one of them out in between lettings, and looked out of the window at the lovely view down Silvermine Bay over to Pot Lam, and suddenly thought,
Yeah.
why are we letting other people
Yeah.
live here? So she came home to me and said, got a wonderful idea. We're going to knock all those flats together, and we're going to
Yeah.
make one house. And you can commute, etc. Because this was
Brilliant.
96, 97, I was still working.
Yes.
And so naturally I told her it's the most stupid idea I'd ever heard. And then I said, yes, dear, and I did what I was told.
Yeah.
And so we spent a little while knocking all the floors together and making one house. Moved over here in 96, 97.
Okay.
And then I commuted from there until I retired from full-time work, which was 2010. And,
Okay.
and just loved it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a very nice place to live.
You finished work 2010, and by that time you'd finished sort of putting the house together as you wanted it,
Pretty well,
which
yes.
is where
yes.
you
we
are
haven't
today.
actually made much changes to it, yes.
No.
Well, I'm a bit of a do-it-yourself or odd job man, and we've done quite a few
Yeah.
odds and ends here and there, and got the garden tidy and how we like it. And
Looks
everything.
lovely.
It's all rather pleasant. Yes.
Yeah. So you've been living full time on Lantau since the mid 1990s, and sort of in that time, what changes have you seen?
It has changed quite a bit. I mean, the airport and the new road, over the new
Yeah.
Tung Road, obviously improved matters enormously. I say improved in inverted commas. Whether one day it's considered an improvement is a moot point, but it made the place much more accessible. Also, having bigger and faster ferries made the place much more accessible.
Yes.
So as a result, more people have come to live here,
Mm.
and obviously with the airport workers, pilots, etc. Interestingly, my wife Sally, when we moved here full time, decided she'd been in education all her career, but we'd been interested in early childhood education.
Yeah.
And when she came over here, brilliant piece of timing. Again, coming back to my point about the doors opening at the right time.
Yeah.
She suddenly realised there was a need for international kindergarten education, because you had so many airport staff
Yes.
and expat pilots with young families living on Lantau who wanted international kindergarten education for their kids.
Yes. Yeah.
So she set up this little international kindergarten here, which she took over. It was a moribund playgroup that she took over and boosted it up and turned into a very successful international school. And of course, all the village elders sent their grandchildren there because they wanted them to learn English. So because of this, there weren't too many Gwailos living in Woiwo at the time. So she was Mrs. Big around Woiwo. Everybody knew her as that golden-haired lady that runs the school. So that worked out extremely well. And she ran that until she was, when would that be, about 2009. And then she decided to retire and took up her present career, which is a botanical artist, and she's done extremely well at that, as you probably know.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, we sell Sally's book here, The Trees of Hong Kong, and it's I can honestly say it is our bestseller over the years, and really that was my introduction to you guys. I think around 7 years ago. It was pre that book having been published, and we talked about doing a launch of it here, and that we did.
That's right.
So. And Sally's cards as well, of course, are legendary here. Yes. Christmas cards and gift cards.
Yeah, she's quite busy. It keeps herself occupied in retirement.
Yeah.
Very important, actually. People say about retirement. I think it's quite funny, actually, that our friends who are still working look at me in horror and say, "You mean you're retired? What do you do all day? How do you manage to fill your time in? Don't you find it boring?" And there are so many things to do in retirement. I don't know how I fitted a job in as well. Yeah. Because I am so busy. I mean, I just just everything that's going on.
Yeah, which brings me on to what do you do? I know you've got a number of hobbies that you.
Yes, I keep myself fairly occupied.
Yeah.
I mean, I essentially I suppose gardening and home maintenance, I suppose, are fairly regular things that go on.
For sure.
In what little spare time I get, I still play around a little bit in matters financial. Yeah. But in what little spare time I get, I've got a workshop at home. And I play around in that, and I make model trains, model boats. I also make dolls' houses for my granddaughters. It's very important. I think it's very important for every little girl should have a grandpa-built doll's house. I think it's very important. I mean, that's continuity, heritage, bonding, family bonding, whatever you want to call it. I think it's quite important. So I made dolls' houses for the grandchildren. That's quite a lot of work in a doll's house. No, I make model boats and model trains. I've even, as I think you know, I've built a model railway around the garden, which is quite interesting because whenever families with kids come around, it's usually the dads that want to play with the trains, which is, I always find rather amusing.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that keeps me. I've always been interested in model engineering, actually. Yes. Even when I was at school, I was always sneaking down to the school workshops and playing around on the lathes and such like. Yeah. And when we moved here in '79, I mean, again, put things in context of what was going on at the time. There were no DVDs, no Netflix, no nothing.
No internet.
No nothing. No. And Hong Kong TV was so utterly mind-numbingly boring.
Still is, Bob.
That you had to do something else while it was on. Because if you just watched it, your brain would freeze. Yeah. So what I started doing was I started making models on a tray on my knee. Which was okay, but Sally got a bit fed up with solder on the carpet and paint on the chairs and everything, so she let me turn half of one of our store cupboards, a sort of storeroom, into a workshop, and it works out quite well because Sally's in her studio and I'm just down the corridor in my little workshop. And it works out very well. We can text each other occasionally, do you want a coffee? Yes. And it all seems to work out quite well. I think that's the beauty of these village houses, isn't it? You have 3 floors to be able to purpose space yourself out. Areas. That's true. Yes, it's interesting actually. Coming back to retirement again, I think it's important to plan retirement and not just slurp into it. It's interesting. I heard so many horror stories from people who'd retired and promptly divorced each other because they suddenly realised they couldn't stand each other.
Yes.
So actually, what I did was for a month or two before I was actually retired at 65, I took to taking a few days off midweek.
Yeah.
And I'd stay at home and we would play at being retired.
Yes.
And this served two purposes. First of all, we found we actually quite liked each other. We could get on very well.
Yeah.
Good news. And secondly, it got me over the shock, which a lot of people can't handle, of finding that the office could survive without me.
Yes.
And in fact, to my chagrin, I noticed that the office actually ran much more smoothly when I wasn't there. So that got me out of that. Because the trouble is, again, with retirement, a lot of people, their job is everything to them. It's their identity, their everything. And once they haven't got that, they just get lost and mill around and watch TV all day and such like. So you've got to have a plan of what you aim to do.
Yeah.
We also do quite a bit of travelling, not so much obviously. COVID stopped all that, but we used to travel around quite a lot. We used to go to UK to see the family as well. We've got two grandchildren in Oxford.
Okay.
And we used to go to see them quite a lot.
Yeah.
But of course they're growing up now. They're going away to university soon, so we don't tend not to go back so soon, so much.
So, I mean, you've been married to Sally, talking about the retirement thing, you've been married sort of around 50 years?
54, coming up 54, I think, yes. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Yeah. So when and how did you meet?
Oh dear. This is a bit embarrassing actually. I mean, you've got to remember the context. I mean, it was pre-internet dating.
Yes.
Everything was done analog style. And I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that I got picked up in a bar by Sally's mother. It was
Chaperone.
I could say that, I suppose. It was in a sailing club up in the Lake District in Lake Windermere, and I just went down to the bar and I fell into conversation with this middle-aged lady who said, yes, I'm just here on a one-week sailing course with my husband and my two daughters, and hey, you're nice, you must meet my daughters. And I thought, wow, this is straight out of Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
Forsooth, my daughters are not spoken for. And then I also thought, if mother has to go out hunting for them, these girls must be unbelievably ugly. And anyway, suddenly in walked Sally, her sister. Sally, I was completely knocked over. Sally, not only the most beautiful, lively, vivacious, personable person I'd ever met, and I completely went to pieces. I fell instantly in love, and I stood there like an idiot all evening with my mouth going up and down, no sound coming out.
Gibbering.
And I remember going to bed that night and thinking, what am I going to do? I've just met the most fantastic girl on earth. Yeah. And what will she ever see in little me? Because I mean, you know me, I'm shy, timid, naive, self-effacing. Yes. So I thought that's no good. She'll never see anything in me. The only solution is I shall have to become a monk.
Yeah.
And it's just as well we didn't have the internet actually, because I would have been scrolling through to see whether I should sign up for the Franciscans or the Tappists or whatever. But anyway, what I didn't know, now this is an interesting, Sally's sister confided in me sometime later that the two girls had seen me walking down to the bar, and Sally's sister said to her, hey, he looks nice, and Sally said, you leave him alone, I saw him first. So the rest is history. By the end of that week, everyone in the sailing clubs was saying, I reckon those two are going to get married. Yeah. And that was in 69. We got married in 71.
1971.
We had to wait a year or two because Sally was still finishing at college. She was still had a year to do at college. Yeah.
So that's some successful marriage, isn't it?
It worked out quite well. I mean, being picked up by your mother-in-law is quite something.
That's quite rare.
Yeah. As I said, who needs internet dating when you got your mother-in-law?
Yeah. Yes. And so, what's your secret then? How have you made it last for so long, 50 years?
Well, actually, it's remarkably easy. Actually, it's funny. I used to get asked this question quite a lot with young girls in the office who are getting married. Say, "Oh, Mr. Bunker, you've been married a long time. You're very happy married. What's the secret?" And I said, "Well, actually, there isn't a secret. It's actually quite simple. You have to be nice to each other. Yes. And what you have to do is you have to play a little game, and you've both got to play the game too. You can't one of you do it and not the other. You've both got to pretend that you are on your first date. Yeah. And you are desperately trying to impress this other person with what a nice person you are. Yeah. Yeah. And provided you keep doing that, it works. Yeah. Yeah.
It falls into place.
Seems to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it certainly has for you guys, and Long may it continue.
Yes.
So it sounds like you've lived the life you wanted to live, actually.
Pretty well.
To me,
Yeah, pretty well.
satisfying.
It's all worked out quite well, actually. Again, coming back to that advice from my headmaster, I just happened to have been standing in an awful lot of right places at the right time. Had to be standing in the bar of a sailing club at the right moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
That fell in
Yeah,
line
it
as well,
all worked
didn't it?
out quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any regrets? Any things that you feel you could have done?
I have got one, actually. I always wish I'd learnt to play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
I come from a totally non-musical family.
Yeah.
And I never learnt the piano or anything like that. And I like music. I like the noise it makes.
Yes.
But I've never had the chance to get involved. I mean, I love opera, for example. I mean, I used to, when I was at university, because I spoke German, I used to work in my summer holidays as a tour group leader, taking groups to the opera festival in Salzburg or to Vienna.
Okay.
I never managed to go to the Wagner festival in Bayreuth. Unfortunately, one of the more senior guys always used to nab that. It was a shame. But I love opera. I think opera is great. And also Sally is a former dancer, and she was a ballet dancer. She also was a can-can girl at one time. She's educated me in ballet, so I love opera and ballet.
Okay.
But no, it's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Maybe I probably could still. Maybe old fingers are still working. Maybe I could learn to play the piano or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Lantau's quite a creative island, as we both know, and I know a piano teacher, a very good piano teacher, and there was always abundant pianos here. Seems to be a hard thing to house, actually, for most people once they move.
Well, maybe you could introduce
maybe
me.
one day. Yes, I certainly can. Yeah, never too late, is it, to do these things? And what about Chinese opera then? Does your love of opera
doesn't extend to Chinese opera, I'm afraid. That's been an acquired taste, I'm afraid.
That's more...
And a taste I have not acquired.
Cats being strangled, isn't it?
But also, of course, my Cantonese is, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to submit, not very good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's shameful, actually, that after all these years here, my Cantonese is dreadful.
Yeah.
I mean, I can hold a basic conversation, but if you want to discuss the latest 5-year economic plan, forget it. I mean, the trouble I have is that all my Chinese friends will speak English. And my Chinese accent my Cantonese is so bad that when I try and practice with them, they just say, "Oh, do shut up and speak English." So I get very little chance to speak it. So, I mean, apart from I used to chat to the tea lady at work, apart from buying things in shops, my Cantonese is pretty limited. So, as another reason why I wouldn't really understand Cantonese opera. As far as other opera goes. Somebody once said that if you're talking about European opera, it doesn't matter what language they're singing in. You don't have to understand that because the plot will always be the same.
Yes.
That in Act 1, the soprano and the tenor are trying to get into bed together.
Okay.
Act 2, the mezzo-soprano and the bass try and hatch a plot to thwart them. And in Act 3, they all die.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you know
you know that's always going to happen. They don't seem to ever. They don't do happy. Actually, come to think of it, they do happy. It doesn't apply to Mozart. Come to think of it. And it certainly doesn't apply to Wagner.
Okay.
So, but everything else, that's how it goes. You can make out what's happening. Yes.
Okay. And before we switch the mic on, you were talking about Asiatic Society. What sort of societies and things are you in?
I'm on the council of the Royal Asiatic Society. Which is basically involved in local history, which has always been something that's history throughout Asia. I also belong to the Royal Geographic Society. They have a lot of very interesting talks and everything. And other things I have done over the years. Well, I used to own some interesting old cars. When we lived Hong Kong side, Lantau is not a good place to have classic cars. I used to have some quite interesting cars, and I was chairman of the Classic Car Club here for some years, and then I was also on the committee of the MG Owners Club, I remember. All things like that I've done.
Didn't you race one of your MGs at Macau once?
Yes, and they used to have, I don't know whether they still do, but the Macau Grand Prix, one of the sporting features was a race for historic sports cars, and my MG was just old enough. So that was good fun. Did that a couple of times.
All right, and I suppose final sort of questions are, here we are in Mui Wo on Lantau Island, and we're going through this revamp. You know, what are your views on it? You've seen it from the sort of the late 80s, really, haven't you, developed? Do you think
yes.
it's a
I mean,
positive
when we
thing?
used to come over here, mid-80s onwards, you got off the ferry pier and there was absolutely nothing here. I mean, it was absolutely black. There were a few streetlights in the town, but all the shops were closed. There was no welcome supermarket. Park and Shop was a tiny little shop that closed about 5:30, which just sold barbecue stuff. In fact, we used to have to bring a four-wheel coolie trolley with an esky on it for food when we came over.
Wow.
And there was a shop that sold offerings if you wanted to go up to the monastery. But, for example, that whole block where Welcome is didn't exist, and there was just nothing here at all. And there was no street lights down the South Lantau Road, and nobody lived here. As I said, I was ridiculed by my colleagues. The fact that you can't buy a place on Lantau.
Why would you come here?
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
And people used to say to me, "What are you going to do in 1997? The place will be valueless. You know, they'll come storming in, and you'll be expelled and everything."
Yeah.
So I used to joke that what I'll do is I'll flood my garden back to the paddy field that it used to be, and I should borrow a water buffalo and get myself a haka hat, and I'll be wading up and down in the mud
Go native.
when the authorities come round to check me, and they'll think I'm a local and they'll let me stay. This is how I used to joke.
Yeah.
And one of my Chinese friends said to me, "Oh no," he said, "that would never work. He said, "they immediately realised you were a fake." So I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, because if you were a real Lantau farmer, you'd be sitting at the edge of the field shouting at your wife while she walked up and down with the buffalo." Sally didn't seem to think that was very funny, actually, but anyway. But no, it's interesting, actually, how parochial so many people are Hong Kong side. I mean, when you say you live on Lantau, they say, "Oh, Discovery Bay." And I say, "Look, do I look the kind of guy that drives a golf cart?"
Costing 10 million?
Then they look at me in absolute horror and say, "Oh, you mean you live on South Lantau? Oh, what's it like over there? How do you manage?
Yes.
Do you have things like shops, and can you get internet and things like that?"
Toilets.
So my way of, well, that's right. I mean, my way of shutting these people up, keep a completely straight face, and then I say, "It's a little bit better now we've got an inside toilet." And they go, "Really?" And they actually, very, very small-minded.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is, and this is what I think differentiates Lantau and why we love living here.
Yeah.
If you live in the mid-levels or somewhere, you never even meet the guy across your landing.
No.
Whereas here, it's a great community. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody helps each other out. You know, you've got a problem, somebody will lend you something, lend you a car, whatever. Transport something. There's always people around to help.
Yeah, very definitely. It's like-minded people, isn't it?
It's a very good community, both the locals and the expats.
I'm bound to agree, and you're right that you do see that you do get that thing from Hong Kong side where they do feel that. I think also they feel that Lantau Island is somewhere near Thailand. It's so far away. It's so hard to get to, and they don't seem to appreciate. We're with you in 30 minutes. It takes longer
reason, you see. I
to get from Sha-Tin to
some of my
town.
friends, finding I've retired on Lantau, look at me in horror and say, "Why don't you retire somewhere like Phuket?" And I say, "Hang on a minute. I live in a beach resort. Right? I've got a nice garden, nice house, great community, very safe environment." Interestingly, one of my friends retired to Phuket and got murdered. So that's rather put me off Phuket. But anyway, but also got this great community, a very safe community, and I'm half an hour away from the busiest city in the world. I've got all the operas, concerts, theatres, ballets, restaurants, you name it, that you could have. How many of those are there in Phuket? And the other thing I find about people that leave Hong Kong when they retire, as I said, they work all these years dreaming of their cottage in Devon with the roses round the door. They get there and they find they're buried alive. They're sort of so many miles from the nearest town, but where there's anything at all. Their high point is a darts match once a week, and they're buried alive. What we have noticed actually so often is that people that run away from Hong Kong miss the place like mad and quite often come sneaking back. We first noticed this in the early mid-1980s. Because there were an awful lot of Guilos who'd come out here to build the MTR and such like. And when all those contracts ran off, they all went off to Singapore, Middle East, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we used to get more and more miserable letters and postcards from, we do miss Hong Kong. And a few months later, you see they've wangled themselves a job back here and they've turned up again.
Yes.
So
yeah.
we've noticed is every time there's been a crisis, the people that run away are generally miserable and quite often lose out. I mean, for example, pre-1997, a lot of people left.
Yeah.
And a lot of people went to Canada. They wanted to get residence permits.
Right.
And they went to Canada, and the Canadian economy was a load of rubbish at that time. Only jobs they could get were
not much better now.
Well, washing up in a Chinese restaurant or something, and then they stayed there long enough to get their residence. Then they came back here, and they found that Hong Kong property prices had shot up, and they couldn't afford to get back on the roundabout.
Yeah, that's the other problem.
So
my
again,
brothers
it's
fell foul of that, really.
Yes, it's never, as I say, Hong Kong always bounces back.
Yeah.
I must admit, every time there's a crisis, I mean, we must have lived through about a dozen crises of one kind or another, be it SARS, COVID was everywhere, I suppose, but SARS, COVID, 1997, the 1998 crash, you name it, we've seen it.
Yes.
Everyone who runs away, they seem to regret it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people disappeared down to Singapore as well, work-wise.
Well, Singapore isn't necessarily the bed of roses. There are other things because you can't get permanent residence down there.
No.
That's the thing. And also,
you don't have 4 seasons.
That's true.
As we do.
Yes, but you can't get permanent residence. And I mean, a friend of mine went down there. He was a sort of follower husband, I suppose. His wife had got a job down there. And she lost her job, and they had to pack up and go in 2 weeks. Yeah. The 2 weeks extension was all they were given. I mean, and when you retire, it's quite difficult to get permanent residence, whereas here we are permanent residents. Yeah, and we get treated very well on it. Yeah, exactly. Very well. It's a good place to get old. We should be quiet about that. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I mean, it's been lovely talking to you, Bob. Well, thanks very much. It's been great chatting to you, actually, and swapping stories. Yes. Yeah, getting a little bit of background as to, how long you've been here. A lot of people see you around, as you say, Moi Wo and Lantau, South Lantau particularly, is a very small place. We know people in all the villages and whether they be locals or whether they be Westerners. And yes, it's very rare that I come down the shops and don't meet at least half a dozen people that I know. Yeah, yes. which is good, isn't it? Which is nice. Yeah. So, just to say, thank you very much for coming today, Bob. And well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very honoured to have been included in your panoply of great podcast stars that you've had. You can listen to all our VIBErations podcasts published on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon Music, Tuner and Alexa, Stitcher, Listen Notes, Player FM, SoundCloud and a few others. Or you can watch on our YouTube channel under Live at VIBEHK, or follow the links from my website vibehk.com. The opening and closing music comes from Celestial and is called Green Island Dub and is on the Retrospect vinyl album On Sale at Vibe. Thanks for listening to the 54th Vibe Book and Music Shop podcast called VIBErations. I'm Gary Brightman. You get my vibe?
Can you imagine what this old island must have looked like to those Dutch sailors when they first saw it? Fresh green. Like a dream of a new world.
They must have held their breath. Afraid it would disappear before they could touch it.